What happens when an electrician who guarded his heart for 2 years after a shattered engagement accidentally opens his female roommate's bedroom door on a rainy Thursday night? He expected an angry shout, but found Lyra in a midnight blue dress, her back exposed, asking if she looked ridiculous. Before he could retreat, she asked him to play her fake boyfriend at a family party to stand against her toxic ex. What began as a simple favor to help a friend step out of the dark shadows turned into an unexpected journey that rewired both of their hearts forevermore. Before we dive into this deeply moving story of quiet vulnerability, unexpected healing, and the courage it takes to open your heart again, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, tap the notification bell, and leave a comment below letting us know where in the world you are watching from today. Your support helps us share stories that remind us all of the power of genuine human connection. Now let us begin. My name is Caleb Morris. I'm 32 years old, and I fix things for a living. I'm an industrial electrician by trade. I spend my days crawling through damp, cobwebbed crawl spaces beneath century-old craftsman houses, replacing scorched ceramic outlets, rewiring dry rotted junction boxes, and explaining to stubborn homeowners that their ancient, humming breaker box is 1 voltage spike away from burning their roof down. Most nights, I come home smelling like raw copper wire, sulfur, and plaster dust. My knuckles are permanently stained black with carbon grease and motor oil, no matter how vigorously I scrub them with pumice soap under scalding kitchen water until my skin turns raw. 2 years ago, my life was mapped out on a completely different grid. I was supposed to marry a woman named Erin. We had the rustic venue booked on the outskirts of town, the linen invitations printed, and even picked out slate gray table runners. I thought our foundation was rock solid. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday evening over cold takeout noodles, Erin sat across from me at our cramped kitchen table, deliberately unclasped her diamond engagement ring, and set it down between us like fruit that had gone rotten in the back of the fridge. "I think we both know this isn't right, Caleb," she said softly, her eyes refusing to meet mine. The terrifying part was that I didn't know. Not until she pointed it out so casually. After Erin packed her bags and left, I became hyper-cautious. I installed thick emotional circuit breakers around my heart. I kept my world intentionally small and controlled. 12-hour work shifts, greasy takeout food, quiet beers with union guys on Friday nights, and my modest 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old brick building near Portland's Pearl District. The oak floorboards creaked constantly underfoot like they were complaining about the weight. The double-hung windows stuck whenever Oregon rain started pouring, and the galley kitchen was so narrow that 2 people had to take turns standing in front of the refrigerator. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And after Erin, mine felt infinitely safer than ours ever had. Then, 8 months ago, Lyra Bennett moved into the empty bedroom down the hall. Lyra was 29, taught music part-time at a middle school, and sang jazz standards at local venues on weekends. She was my complete polar opposite. A whirlwind of uncalibrated energy and vibrant color. She hummed vintage Motown and soul music while scrubbing pans, kept a thriving basil plant on the sunlit windowsill that she spoke to like a person, and once ate cereal out of a massive wooden salad bowl because, in her words, standard cereal bowls lack artistic ambition. When she first moved in, we established strict, clinical boundaries. We split rent down to the exact penny, made a color-coded chore chart on the fridge, labeled our respective oat milk cartons, and implicitly agreed never to ask uncomfortable personal questions about the past. But living under the same roof has a subtle, relentless way of eroding boundaries over time. Within 3 months, I started noticing her quiet patterns. I learned that she drank chamomile tea with clover honey when insomnia hit her at 2 a.m. I noticed how she stood in front of the hallway mirror, practicing confident smiles before calling her mother. I found her bright yellow sticky notes everywhere, on the microwave, on the bathroom mirror, and once stuck to my metal toolbox reading, "Don't get electrocuted today. The rent is due on Friday." She noticed my patterns, too. She knew that if I was brewing dark roast coffee at midnight, a tough electrical job was weighing on my mind. She knew I hated rainy Fridays because Friday was the day Erin and I were supposed to have walked down the aisle. She never brought it up out loud, but whenever a rainy Friday rolled around, a fresh blueberry muffin would magically appear on my side of the counter. We never called it intimacy. We called it being good roommates. But deep down, the emotional current was already humming beneath the floorboards. It was a cold, miserable Thursday night when I dragged my exhausted body up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment. I had spent 8 grueling hours in the damp, dirt basement of an old house near Hawthorne, fixing an amateur wiring job that had been slowly scorching its insulation inside the drywall for years, while the homeowner insisted it was fine. By the time I unlocked our front door at 8:30 p.m., my lower back was throbbing, my eyes burned from plaster dust, and all I wanted was a scalding hot shower and absolute silence. The apartment was mostly dark. Only a thin, warm strip of amber light bled out from beneath Lyra's bedroom door. From inside, I heard a faint, frustrated mutter, followed by the soft metallic clatter of a wooden clothes hanger hitting the hardwood floorboards. I knocked once, lightly. Lyra? No answer. I knocked again, slightly firmer. Still nothing. Assuming she was wearing noise-canceling headphones while getting dressed, I turned the brass door handle and pushed the door open just 3 inches to poke my head in. And everything stopped. Lyra stood in front of her full-length mirror, framed in the soft, golden glow of her bedside lamp. She was wearing a breathtaking, midnight blue silk dress that slipped gracefully off her left shoulder, revealing the sharp line of her collarbone. The zipper running down her back was stuck halfway up her spine, leaving a wide diamond of smooth skin exposed. Her dark hair was pinned up messily, loose strands falling gently against her bare neck and shoulder blades. She looked like a woman trying on armor she wasn't sure she was allowed to wear. The moment the door creaked, Lyra spun around so fast the silk fabric whispered softly against her legs. I froze with my hand glued to the brass knob, every muscle in my neck locking up. My immediate thought wasn't she's beautiful. It was I am about to get evicted from my own apartment. I snapped my head violently to the side, staring intently at the hallway wall.
Gu, I'm sorry.
I stammered. I thought you called out. I didn't mean to. I didn't see anything. I'm stepping back right now. Caleb. Her voice was surprisingly quiet. It wasn't sharp, angry, or embarrassed. It was steady, laced with a strange, delicate vulnerability. I kept my eyes pinned to the hallway wall like it held the secret to the universe. Yeah. A soft, charged beat of silence stretched between us. If you already saw, tell me the absolute truth. Is this dress too much? I turned my head back slowly, keeping my eyes fixed strictly on her face. She was holding the slipping shoulder strap against her chest, trying to offer a casual, playful smile. But her fingers were trembling faintly against the blue silk. She wasn't asking a cosmetic question about fashion. She was asking if she looked ridiculous for daring to step out of her safe shadow. I took a slow breath and allowed myself to really look at her. No, I said, my voice dropping into a low, quiet truth. It's not too much. It's the kind of dress that makes everyone else in the room feel bad. They didn't try harder to be decent when they stood next to you. The raw honesty of the words hung in the warm air between us like heavy perfume. Lyra went utterly still. Then, a tiny, breathless laugh escaped her lips, her eyes sparkling under the lamplight. Do you always say dangerous things like that, electrician? I work with live wires, I replied softly. Sometimes sparks escape. Lyra leaned against the edge of her dresser, still pinning the blue fabric against her chest. This Saturday night, I have to go to my sister Tessa's engagement dinner, she said softly, looking down at her shoes. Sounds like a fun family event, I offered carefully. It isn't, she swallowed hard. My mother invited Adrian. I knew that name. Adrian was the polished ex-fiancé who drove a German sports car, wore tailored blazers, and specialized in making Lyra feel like she was constantly failing at being a competent adult. My mother thinks we should talk like adults, Lyra continued, a bitter edge entering her tone. She adores him because he knows how to manipulate a room. If I sit at that table by myself, they will spend 3 hours picking my life apart. She looked up at me with a thin, fragile smile. So, Caleb Morris, do you want to make it up to me by being my fake boyfriend on Saturday night? Every alarm bell in my head went off. She was my roommate. If this went sideways, there would be nowhere to hide. Yet, looking at her standing in the soft lamplight, holding up a dress she felt unworthy to wear, I saw a woman who was exhausted from defending her own worth. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Lyra blinked, surprised. "You're actually saying yes?" "Just come with me," she whispered. "Hold my hand. And don't let me feel small when he starts talking." "I can do that," I nodded firmly. She let out a long breath, then pointed toward the exposed zipper running down her spine. "And since you caused this situation, can you zip me up?" My heart slammed against my ribs like a high-voltage current. I took a step into her space, smelling jasmine, lavender, and warm vanilla. My hands felt surprisingly cautious as I pinched the delicate zipper pull between my fingers. I pulled it up slowly, careful not to brush her bare skin. When the pull reached the top hook, Lyra met my gaze in the mirror. No roommate banter remained. Just two people standing dangerously close to something unnamed. By 7 a.m. the following morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Lyra slapping a bright yellow sticky note onto the refrigerator door. Surviving the engagement party plan. It listed 5 clear rules. Don't let Adrian pull her aside. Don't let her mother pry into long-term plans. Keep backstory details simple. Squeeze hands 3 times for "save me." And tell an absurd work story if she was about to cry. That evening, we sat at the narrow kitchen table with her leather notebook open like we were planning a high-stakes heist. "How long have we officially been together?" she asked, tapping her pen against her chin. 6 months, I suggested. "And how did we cross the line from roommates to partners?" I leaned back, looking at her in the warm amber light. "We tell them the truth. I saw you sitting on the kitchen counter at 1 a.m. drinking chamomile tea because you couldn't sleep, and I realized I wanted to keep something good just for myself before everyone else started having opinions about it." Lyra's pen froze mid-air. "Did you just make that up?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't use that line, because if you say that, my mother will believe it. And I might believe it, too." Saturday evening arrived with an overcast Portland sky dripping rain over the cobblestone streets. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror wearing a dark charcoal suit, the suit I had bought 2 years prior for my own canceled wedding. A soft knock sounded, and Lyra stepped into the hallway wearing the midnight blue dress. Her lips painted a deep wine red. She looked completely breathtaking. "This suit isn't as tragic as you described," she said quietly, reaching up with steady hands to straighten my jacket lapels. "How are you holding up?" I asked, looking into her brown eyes. "Terrified," she admitted softly. "Adrian is already there." I wrapped my fingers firmly around her hand, squeezing once. "Let's go." The restaurant was an upscale bistro near the Pearl District. Exposed red brick, yellow Edison lighting, crisp white tablecloths, and champagne glasses arranged like a military parade. Her sister Tessa greeted us first, pulling Lyra into a tight hug before turning to me with a curious smile. "So you're real. I was starting to think Lyra made you up." Her father Martin approached next with a quiet, firm handshake. But her mother, Celeste, stood near the head table in a pearl dress, her eyes narrowing the second she saw our joined hands. "Caleb," Celeste said, extending a manicured hand. "Lyra has never once mentioned you. Some things are important enough that you want to protect them from other people's opinions before they even have a chance to form," I answered calmly, looking her straight in the eye. Celeste went quiet. Lyra turned her head and stared at me in surprise, her pulse racing against my palm. For 30 minutes, we navigated small talk with relatives. Every few minutes, Lyra's fingers gave my hand 3 squeezes, our secret signal working as planned. Then Adrian walked in. Tall, sharply dressed, with an easy commercial smile. He greeted Celeste like family and walked straight toward us with supreme confidence. "Lyra," Adrian said smoothly, "you look beautiful." "Thank you," she answered flatly. His gaze slid over to me, calculating my posture and suit. "And this must be Caleb, the roommate." "Boyfriend," Lyra corrected firmly, lifting her chin. Adrian smiled patronizingly. "Be careful, Caleb. Lyra has a habit of turning the men around her into emotional projects. I kept my voice steady and cold as steel. I'm an electrician. I know the difference between a circuit that actually needs fixing and one someone else deliberately shorted just to blame someone else. Adrian's smile tightened instantly. For a split second, his charming mask slipped, revealing the cold arrogance beneath. I could feel Lyra starting to shrink beside me, her breathing turning shallow as Adrian's presence pressed down on her. But then, something remarkable shifted inside her. Lyra let go of my hand and took a firm, deliberate step forward, standing directly in front of Adrian. Enough, she said quietly. The word cut right through the ambient conversation in the dining room. Adrian blinked, caught off guard. Lyra, I was just... No, she cut him off, her voice gathering incredible strength. You were doing exactly what you always do. Smiling while you make me feel small. Acting polite while you remind me that I'm too sensitive, too difficult, too much. You made me doubt my own feelings until I stopped trusting myself. You're making a scene, Lyra, Adrian warned in a sharp, low whisper. No, for the first time in my life, I'm telling the truth, Lyra said clearly, her voice echoing across the quiet tables. She turned slightly toward me, her head held high. And Caleb isn't my fake boyfriend. He's the first person who never asked me to prove why I was hurting. The silence in the room was absolute. Even her mother stood motionless by the champagne table. Lyra looked back at Adrian with complete calm. You can call him whatever you want, but he's real. And I'm done pretending I need anyone's permission to choose him. She turned fully toward me, her voice softening into a whisper intended only for us. I don't want you to be my fake boyfriend anymore, Caleb. I want you to stand next to me because you actually want to be here. My chest felt dangerously tight. All the fear of being hurt that I had been carrying for 2 years melted away as I looked at her. I took a step closer into her space, cupping her cheek gently. I've wanted to be here since before we left the apartment. Lyra pulled me down by my jacket lapels into a kiss right there in the middle of her sister's party. The kiss wasn't desperate or staged. It was certain, electric, and profound. A heavy steel door closing forever on everything that came before. Afterward, Adrian grabbed his coat and left without another word. Celeste walked over slowly, whispering quietly, I didn't know, Lyra. You didn't want to know, Lyra replied with steady grace. She took my hand tightly. Let's go home. When we got inside our quiet apartment, Lyra stood in the living room, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Caleb, do you regret it? Getting dragged into my mess? I stepped closer, looking at her gently in the dim light. I used to think my life was quiet because I had healed, but really, it was quiet because I stopped letting anyone knock on the door. Tonight you knocked pretty hard, and I don't regret opening it for a single second. A single tear slipped down her cheek as she walked straight into my arms, burying her face against my chest. I don't want to sleep alone tonight, but I don't want us to rush either. Then I'll sleep on the couch, I said softly, stroking her hair. Your bedroom door stays open. At 1:17 a.m., my phone lit up on the coffee table. An unknown number from Adrian read, You don't know her. Ask her why everyone eventually leaves. I stared at the dark screen, then deliberately turned the phone face down. Morning would be soon enough to deal with ghosts. The next morning, Lyra walked into the kitchen wearing my oversized gray hoodie. She found me attempting to make pancakes, the first batch already charred black on the griddle. I slid my phone across the counter toward her without saying a word. Adrian texted last night. She read the messages in complete silence, then set the phone down with calm resolve. I'm blocking his number right now. Then I'm calling my sister, and then I'm telling my mother that if she ever brings Adrian around me again, I won't attend family events. I smiled, flipping a fresh pancake. Busy morning. Caleb, I don't want you to become my shield, she said, looking up at me with absolute earnestness. I want to choose you simply because I actually want you. Then today we don't decide forever, I said, taking her hand across the counter. Today you eat burnt pancakes, block your ex, and tonight, if you still want to, I take you on a real date. No fake stories, no exes. Just us. Lyra smiled genuinely, her eyes shining with warmth. I'd really love that. That evening, we went to a quiet bistro by the river. We talked for hours about her music students, my worst electrical call-outs, and the silly things that made us laugh until our cheeks hurt. Walking along the rain-slicked riverbank, she reached for my hand first. Under the wooden awning of a closed bookstore, she turned to me. You can kiss me now, electrician. No audience required. And I did. Autumn arrived in Oregon with crisp air and golden leaves. Tessa got married in a stunning glass greenhouse, and Lyra sang a breathless acoustic song during the ceremony. Before she sang her first note, she met my eyes in the second row and offered a radiant smile. 6 months later, the boundaries in our apartment had completely dissolved. My oversized hoodies permanently lived in her closet. Her sheet music was scattered across my oak desk, and the basil plant on the windowsill was thriving because I secretly watered it every morning before leaving for work. One rainy evening, a full year after the night I accidentally opened her bedroom door, I was replacing a flickering light switch in our living room while Lyra sat beside me on the floor, holding my spare screws. I looked at her, nose smudged with plaster dust, eyes sparkling with pure, unadulterated happiness, and the words simply tumbled out. Move into my room. Lyra froze, a screwdriver held mid-air. What? We can keep your old room as your private music studio, I said, taking the tool from her hand. But move your bed and clothes into mine. Let's stop pretending we're just roommates who happen to fall asleep together every night. She stared at me for 3 long seconds, then broke into a bright, melodious laugh. That is officially the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard. Lyra Bennett, I said clearly, taking both of her hands in mine. Do you want to live with me in a way where there aren't 2 separate bedroom doors anymore? Her laughter softened into profound tenderness. She pulled me down by my collar and kissed me deeply.
Ido.
Looking at Lyra laughing beside me that night as we labeled new boxes, I realized my life was no longer a small, cautious room built out of fear. It was a home filled with music, sticky notes, and open doors. Sometimes, love doesn't begin with a grand romantic gesture. Sometimes, it starts with a door opened by mistake, a midnight blue dress, and a simple request. If you already saw, come with me tonight. And I was so glad I went with her, all the way home. Real love doesn't ask you to hide your scars or shrink your presence. It simply invites you to step through the door and be seen as you truly are. Caleb spent 2 years hiding behind his tools, but Lyra showed him that the bravest thing an electrician can do is allow a fresh spark to rewire his heart. Thank you so much for joining us for this moving story today. If Caleb and Lyra's journey touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We would love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a chance encounter or a simple mistake open the door to something truly beautiful in your life? Take care of yourselves, stay kind, and we will see you in the next story.